We should focus to our top story. The nation is at risk, warns Rahul Gandhi. He's talking about the threat India faces at our borders. In Lok Sabha, Rahul Gandhi accused the Narendra Modi government of what he claimed was the single biggest crime, bringing China and Pakistan together at India's borders. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar brought out some facts, including Pakistan ceding the Shaksgam Valley to China in 1963. And the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor coming up in 2013. Both before the Narendra Modi government, both times when the Congress was in power. As India and China remain locked in a no-war, no-peace situation along the line of actual control from Ladakh to Arunachal Pradesh, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi raised the political heat in Parliament. Speaking in Lok Sabha, Rahul Gandhi, Congress MP from Wayanad in Kerala, accused the Narendra Modi government of a massive strategic blunder, bringing China and Pakistan together at India's borders.
It is very clear that the Chinese and the Pakistanis are planning. Look at the weapons that they are buying. Look at their activity. Look at the way they are talking. Look at who they are speaking to. I am clearly stating in the House of Parliament that we have made a massive blunder, and we need to make sure, absolutely sure, that we can defend ourselves against the Chinese.
Rahul Gandhi accused the government of failing on multiple fronts of foreign policy, from Nepal to Pakistan to Sri Lanka, resulting in what he claimed was India's isolation.
Ask yourselves, why you were not able to get a guest on Republic Day. Ask yourself that question. Don't look surprised. Ask yourself that question. What is happening is that India today is completely isolated. We are completely isolated and surrounded. We are surrounded in Sri Lanka, Nepal, Burma, Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, everywhere we are surrounded.
The attack on foreign policy, national security and Jammu and Kashmir did not end here. Rahul Gandhi went on to target the government for not being alive to the threat of China at India's borders, a challenge that he insists remains from Doklam to Ladakh.
I can see that China has a clear-cut plan. The foundations of their plan have been put in place in Doklam and in Ladakh. Yes. Do not underestimate what we are facing. This is a very, very serious threat to the Indian nation.
External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar took to social media platform Twitter, giving Rahul Gandhi a lesson in history. He said, and I quote, "Perhaps some lessons in history are in order. In 1963, Pakistan illegally handed over the Shaksgam Valley to China. China built the Karakoram Highway through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir in the 1970s. From the 1970s, the two countries also had close nuclear collaboration. In 2013, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor started. So ask yourself, were China and Pakistan distant then? As the opposition targets the government on Chinese transgressions at the LAC and India's actions to counter the threat, our soldiers and air warriors and the Rafale fighter jets continue to stoutly push back against expansionist forces." Bureau Report, India Today. So is there merit in Rahul Gandhi saying India has failed in what he terms is the single biggest strategic goal, keep China and Pakistan apart? Let's throw this open to our guests. Supriya Srinath joins us from the Congress Party. Sanju Verma represents the Bharatiya Janata Party. Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar is a former top diplomat, studies the region very closely, joins us on the broadcast. But permit me to lay the ground rules for all our guests. Wait for your turn, no crosstalk. Faders will instantly be put down. this is a very serious national security discussion on India First. Sanju Verma, Rahul Gandhi has accused the Narendra Modi government of what he claims is a strategic blunder. He says your government failures have brought China and Pakistan together.
You know, Gaurav, I think the External Affairs Minister has schooled Rahul Gandhi brilliantly, right from saying who actually built the Karakoram Highway to the fact that the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor started in 2013 when the Congress was in power, to the fact that we all 8,000 square kilometers of Aksai Chin was handed on a golden platter to the Chinese thanks to an incompetent Jawaharlal Nehru. And I don't need to reinforce it stronger by saying that whatever we won in 1971, the spoils of war were lost on the negotiating table by a completely meek and vacillating Indira Gandhi. We could not even secure back 93,000 prisoners of war. And through your channel, Gaurav, I want to ask Rahul Gandhi, please tell us, what were you doing in 2008, signing an MOU with the Chinese Communist Party? Why was your mother, Sonia Gandhi, a guest of honor at the Beijing Olympics in 2008? Sonia Gandhi did not have any official position in 2008 in the government.
Let's take this one by one.
The fact is that the Gandhis have been enjoying the magnanimity of the Chinese. The Gandhis have been enjoying the largesse
Ma'am, you've made your point.
Chinese.
Now hold. Supriya Srinath did not interrupt you. I expect the same courtesy when Supriya Srinath speaks. Supriya Srinath, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, as the BJP puts it, literally schooled Rahul Gandhi on facts. Pakistan has been China's sidekick for close to 60 years. Shaksgam Valley was ceded illegally to Pakistan in 1963. CPEC came up in 2013. How has this government brought China and Pakistan together, ma'am?
With all due respect to India's foreign minister, Mr. Jaishankar needs to be reminded that his job as foreign minister is not to be his master's voice or to take the Twitter by storm, quote unquote, like the BJP would want us to believe. His job is to ensure that our foreign policy is robust, that India's interests are held up diplomatically, and what we are seeing right now is India's isolation, not just in the world, but actually especially in our neighborhood. Talk about Nepal, talk about Bangladesh, Burma, talk about Sri Lanka. What is happening in our neighborhood? And that's precisely what is the issue here. The issue here is that when over 50 generals together write a letter to the Prime Minister stating that the Haridwar Dharm Sansad is actually putting the efforts that the army is making on the borders astray, the Prime Minister or the Home Minister or the Defense Minister do not speak a word. But I want to make it a bigger picture dialogue. And I think the big picture dialogue is coming from the first part of his speech, where he's essentially saying that India is being weakened because we are not letting our youth find jobs, because there is huge unemployment, because there is a gaping inequality in this society, and the government of the day doesn't seem to mind that.
No interruptions.
That wealth is being concentrated in the hands of very, very few people, and 23 crore people have been pushed into poverty. Who's answering these questions? You make a budget that is
the moment she finishes speaking, I'm sorry, we're giving equal time to all guests.
What is there to increase jobs? Please tell me this.
She can't have a monologue.
Okay.
Please tell me
Hold
this.
on.
How
Okay,
is this
both
going to
faders go
generate
down
jobs?
instantly. Both faders go down instantly. Supriya Srinath, this part of the debate on jobs was discussed on a previous show. This debate is about foreign policy. Again, a very important aspect raised by Rahul Gandhi. My question was on Rahul Gandhi saying that the biggest challenge or strategic goal was to ensure China and Pakistan don't come together. This government failed. External Affairs Minister schooled him on facts. This debate is restricted to the foreign policy aspect, ma'am. But let me bring in Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. I am sorry, we will give equal time to all guests, but to stay on the question asked, please. Ambassador Sajjanhar, have China and Pakistan come together only in 2014? Is Rahul Gandhi on thin ice on facts?
Absolutely, he's on very thin ice, and I'm very happy that the External Affairs Minister did the schooling that was required to be done, because Pakistan and China, ever since 1962, ever since we lost the war to China, Pakistan saw an opportunity and it started warming up to China. And as to reach out to China, it gave about 6,000 square kilometers of the Shaksgam Valley. And after that, there's been no looking back. It's not only the Karakoram highway through there, the nuclear cooperation, collaboration, but it's also, of course, Pakistan was receiving armaments equipment from America, but it also started receiving from China. And the biggest thing is the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Now, let me say, it's good that External Affairs Minister gave this history lessons to Rahul Gandhi, but I don't think it is born so much out of so much of ignorance. What I could see in the manner in which Rahul Gandhi was talking, it was more of frustration, and it is a pity that, a question of national security has been politicized. Coming on to the other issue, Gaurav, that you have raised, whether India is isolated.
Sir, I'll come to that aspect in just a moment, and I will come to you on isolation since Supriya Srinath raised it. Supriya, you want to elaborate on the point of isolation, because on bringing China and Pakistan together, which Rahul Gandhi thinks is the biggest threat to our country on strategy, that happened in the 1960s and not today. According to the External Affairs Minister, you also heard Ambassador Sajjanhar on isolation. Now, there is a pushback against China globally. India is also a part of the Quad. External Affairs Minister says those who live in India know that we were in midst of a corona wave. The 5 Central Asian presidents who were to come, they did a virtual summit with the Prime Minister on the 27th of January. How is India isolated, ma'am?
You don't think India is isolated? And if Mr. Sajjanhar had made more neutral observations, I perhaps would have engaged with him. These are very partisan words that he used, and I don't want to demean his position that he's held by countering him. I don't usually like to counter non-politicos, but because it's in the garb of politics,
the question that I asked, please,
that I counter some of his statements.
Go on, ma'am.
You don't think we are isolated? You don't think we are isolated? Nepal is twiddling China's tune. Nepal makes an airport in our territory, changes our map at will. Bangladesh is giving China the place to make submarine in Cox's Bazar. Sri Lanka is in bed with China. I mean, what more proof do you want? Taliban is being acted upon by Pakistan and China
only
together,
Supriya Srinath,
and you
please.
don't believe that, and you don't believe that we are isolated, and you don't believe we are isolated within our borders. Absolutely, we are. America got 125 countries to sign a paper before they were relinquishing Taliban. They did not invite India. 125 countries. Russia made a troika plus, invited Pakistan, but not India. I really want to understand what other isolation do you need? And one last point that I would want to end here. पाकिस्तान के बारे में और चाइना के बारे में प्रधानमंत्री जी बड़ी बड़ी बातें करते थे लाल आंखों की। आज तो सच्चाई ये है कि लाल आंखों दिखाने का मन था, उन्होंने चाइना को सबसे बड़ा ट्रेडिंग पार्टनर बना लिया पिछले साल, ऐप बैन करते रहे। We have done the maximum business with China compared to the rest of the world. That's the reality. 18 बार तो आप मिले हैं चाइनीज से।
Ma'am, you've made your point uninterrupted.
झूलते थे साबरमती से लेकर महाबलीपुरम तक जो शहनाई सुनते थे, ये बताइए उसका जवाब, उसका कोई जवाब नहीं होगा, आपके चीनी प्रेम का जवाब नहीं आएगा।
संजू वर्मा, please respond.
चाइना पर
संजू वर्मा, please respond now. Only Sanju Verma speaks, and okay, Sanju Verma, your turn now. Uninterrupted as you speak. India under Narendra Modi stands isolated is what the Congress party believes. Pakistan is not a friend. China is giving us grief at the line of actual control. Rahul Gandhi says China has a plan, the foundation of which was put in place in Doklam, continues through Ladakh. The concept of two fronts has now been brought to a single front.
Gaurav, the Congress got uninterrupted time. I don't want to be interrupted when I'm making my point.
Ma'am, I'm watching. I have a stopwatch. Go ahead.
First and foremost, we all know that the Quad came as an informal gathering of a couple of superpowers way back in 2007. But I'm so proud as an honest tax-paying Indian citizen, forget being the national spokesperson of BJP, that it was under the aegis of Prime Minister Narendra Modi that as recently as in 2021, we had the first formal physical Quad summit. And I think it cannot get bigger than that in a clear rebuttal to China that Chinese aggression in the East Pacific Ocean and the South China Sea will not be tolerated. Tell me one government in post-independent India which has forced China to voluntarily disengage. Gaurav, you know that China shares a territorial border with more than 14 countries and has a dispute with more than 21 nations. Again, thanks to the muscular policy of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, if that is what you want to call it, that in February 2021, China was forced to disengage post-Galwan. Under Nehru, we were giving away territory in Chinese. And under Narendra Modi, we are telling the bully that you need to be shown the door, you need to be shown your place. And one more thing, when the Afghanistan crisis was at its peak last year, the Modi government again showed its softer side. And we ensured that more than 500 Indians, Afghans, Hindus, Sikhs were brought back and the whole world lauded us.
Let me get Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. Ma'am, uninterrupted equal time to both guests is what I had promised and what I will ensure. But Ambassador Sajjanhar, I apologize on the behalf of a guest for saying something. I mean, you're my guest, you're my responsibility, and I would request other guests to refrain from making personal comments. Ambassador Sajjanhar, in your appreciation, as a respected voice on foreign policy, is India isolated? Or is Rahul Gandhi once again skating on thin ice, taking on Narendra Modi government, perhaps on one of its stronger points, national security and foreign policy?
Absolutely, I agree with you, Gaurav. I don't think India is isolated. On the contrary, I think India's stature, cloud profile in the world today is much better than it has ever been. You know, just a couple of points that were made. China has been constantly, you know, over the last 60, 70 years doing this salami slicing against Indian territory. And I think over the last few years, we have stopped that. I would recall that, you know, in 2013, when Li Keqiang, the Chinese Prime Minister, was visiting India, and that time also, they had made an incursion in Demchok. At that time, our foreign minister had said, you know, what is happening on the border is like a small pimple on the face of a beautiful woman. That is, our relations between India and China are like the face of a beautiful woman, and this is an aberration, and you have to rush to Beijing to sort of, you know, sort out the matters. This time, whether it is Doklam, whether it is Galwan, we have given them, we did the mirror deployment here, we pushed back there, we might have lost 40. CIA said that China lost about 65 to 100. TASS said that they lost more than 45. So yes. I don't think it was an unequal fight at all. You look at any other criteria, you know, this, one of your speakers was saying that, India was isolated on Afghanistan because Russia invited all the others. You see, Russia, on the 26th of August, I will remind you that after the Taliban had taken over power on the 15th of August, Putin rang up Mr. Modi and said, let us establish a bilateral channel of cooperation on Afghanistan. I would also bring to your mind that Mr. Putin came to India. He was here for 5 hours. He traveled 9 hours one way, 9 hours the other way. It all means the importance that they attach to India. And also the fact that we are working together. This was only his second visit in 2 years outside the country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, on the point, we had 20 fatalities at Galwan, sir, and the Chinese, according to TASS, as you rightly pointed out, had 44 at least. But Sanju Verma, Rahul Gandhi made another point. He says the Congress has experience, Congress has understanding of foreign policy. Consult the Congress. Will the government do that?
Why am I not getting time to speak?
Okay.
You will after this question.
Gaurav, can you please ask this lady not to heckle me?
No interruptions.
Again, bunch of people.
Gaurav.
Supriya Srinath ka fader down kijiye. Only one person at a time and no snide remarks, please.
Yeah. Gaurav, you know, everybody who says that the Narendra Modi foreign policy has been a failure, I want to tell them today it is not India that stands isolated. It is Pakistan that stands isolated. Pakistan has been trying its level best in the last 7 years to bring Kashmir into the equation. But Kashmir has completely been stripped out of the equation thanks to Narendra
Fair enough.
Modi.
Let me
But
get the
I want to
last
just
word.
make one
Supriya
point.
Srinath, Rahul Gandhi says, look at the weapons that China and Pakistan is acquiring. Is that a little strange, ma'am? Because 10 years of Congress being in power often is looked at as the decade of defense modernization, the decade lost. Supriya Srinath. Only Supriya Srinath and no one else.
No, I don't get your question. I think that's a misplaced question. I'm going to talk about what he has said, and I will reiterate that China actually kidnapped a 17-year-old person from Arunachal Pradesh, and this was not me. This was the BJP MP Tapir Gaon who pointed it out. The Home Minister, the Defense Minister, and the Prime Minister did not speak a word. That is what you have done to China. In Doklam, you stood away from the point of clash, but they have fortified the entire plateau. That's on you. China continues to be in India's borders. That's on you. We have come back from the point where we were patrolling. That's on you. That is what you've done. You can keep talking about history ad nauseum, but the reality is that you have made India's borders absolutely insecure, and also by weakening our democracy and letting so many people be unemployed and letting poverty rise.
Unemployment is not a part of this part of the debate, but whether the Chinese are patrolling 1 kilometer this side or that side, how much land did we lose in Aksai Chin? Should we not discuss this in its entirety as one nation to respond to China, whether it's the government or the opposition, is my point. Well, to all my guests, many thanks for joining me.